Hey, Advanced Lit, we're going to do a little lesson over how to write a quote sandwich, what it is, and how to write it. So you're going to need a couple things. You're going to need the handout that is over a quote sandwich. You're going to need the worksheet, your actual assignment to write a quote sandwich over a story of an hour. You're probably going to want to look at It's More Than Just Rain or Snow or Springtime, and it's never just heart disease and rarely just illness. And of course, you're going to want story of an hour so that you can use this for the text of your quote sandwich. Okay, so let's start with what a quote sandwich actually is. All right, so if you get out your handout, the one with, yes, the sandwich on it. A quote sandwich actually consists of three parts, and this is why I've kind of started calling it a quote sandwich. First, you have a lead-in. So the lead-in, it sets up the point that you're trying to make, and it provides context for your reader. So when you are writing a quote sandwich, anytime that really you're doing literary analysis, you need to assume that your reader has also read the text. So there's never going to be a summary. You do need to provide context so that the person knows where you're going to be working at in the text, but you do not have to summarize the whole story. That's not what literary analysis is. Literary analysis is taking what the author has done and analyzing the effect that it has on the reader. Okay, so the first thing that you're going to do is come up with a lead-in, okay? So like I said, it sets up the point that you're trying to make and provides context for your reader. So not a summary of the entire story, just the part that you are wanting to focus on. Then you put in the quote, the actual quote from the text. It provides evidence for your point. And then a follow-up. This should be the lengthiest piece. It should explain how the evidence supports your point. Okay, so here's an example. So there's a short story written by a woman named Willa Cather called Paul's Case, and it's about a teenager who his teachers are having a hard time understanding because he just doesn't follow the rules. Okay, so here's a lead-in. Cather also characterizes Paul by others' perceptions about him, especially his teachers when they confer about his progress. In fact, Cather claims that, here's our quote, his teachers were in despair, and his drawing master voiced the feeling of them all when he declared that there was something about the boy which none of them understood. End quote. Okay, so this was taken directly from the text. Okay, notice over here I say that your quote must be integrated, so you can't just have a standalone or dropped quote. And then the follow-up. Here's where you do your explaining. It says, it's apparent that his teachers not only don't understand Paul, but have no desire to do so. The fact that they are offended by his very presence, as well as the red carnation in his buttonhole, demonstrates their lack of empathy for the motherless boy. So all of this talks about one point that you're trying to make and analyze why the author did what they did. So you pull something from the text, or you give a lead in as to what you're going to talk about, you pull something from the text, and then you follow up by explaining it. Okay, so let's practice on something that everybody knows and it's pretty easy to understand. So we're going to go with a nursery rhyme. Okay, so here we have the Itsy Bitsy Spider. I'm sure that you guys have heard of the Itsy Bitsy Spider. So just to refresh your memory, remember the Itsy Bitsy Spider climbed up the water spout. Down came the rain and washed the spider out. Out came the sun and dried up all the rain. So the Itsy Bitsy Spider climbed up the spout again. All right, we're trying to analyze how our author, Kate Chopin, uses weather or illness in her short story. What effect does that have on us as the reader? Okay, so we're going to take Itsy Bitsy Spider, and do you notice any weather or illness? Okay, I was hoping that you would say that. We've got the rain, and we've got the sun. Okay, so the other day we talked about things that rain could stand for or symbolize. We talked about rebirth. Um, Rain can also be a destructive force. Some people love gloomy days, other people hate them. You're stuck inside. Then we have to think about what the rain did to the spider. Well, it washed the poor guy out. I mean, off he went, right? But then the sun, you guys talked about how much you love summer and how there's no real pressures except maybe going to work. You don't have to worry about school. You love being outside. It's warm. You feel happy when you're out in the sun. So the sun came out and it dried up all that rain, and then the spider got to crawl back up the water spout here. Whoop. Okay, so let's see how a quote sandwich might work for that. All right, so here's a quote sandwich example. Yeah, I know, Benny. It's about a spider, not a kitty. All right. So here's an example of a quote sandwich. Let me try to get that in focus for you. Okay. So we give it a lead-in and some context. So I said, nursery rhymes like the Itsy Bitsy Spider can incorporate weather imagery that to inspire life lessons. Okay, so I have a point that sometimes weather imagery can inspire life lessons, and the context is the Itsy Bitsy Spider. Okay. All right, so this would be our lead in. Okay, so look, it's just one little sentence. All right, now we're going to use a quote. It says, we learn of the spider's plight during a rainstorm that, quote, washed the spider out. Soon after, the sun comes up and dried up all the rain. So you can see how we have that in quotation marks. So I've integrated the text from the nursery rhyme. Okay, so this is our quote. All right, and then I have an explanation of how this weather imagery might inspire a life lesson. It says, the lesson that children can learn from this nursery rhyme is that an episode of adversity is only temporary. While the rain washes the spider off the waterspout, the sun, representing optimism, comes out and changes the situation. Once the rain has dried, the spider is able to go about his way, teaching children that with a little patience and perseverance, anything is possible. And do you see how this, our follow-up or our explanation, it's much longer. So your job is to, one, notice where there's something interesting going on. So we're going to focus on weather or illness injury in Story of an Hour. You're going to pull a quote from it, and then the real work comes with you explaining how that quote makes a point with this illness or weather imagery. Okay, so if you take a look at the actual assignment, it's what I just said a second ago. Okay. Okay, so here are the directions. It says, choose one of the places where we found weather or illness in Story of an Hour. Think about why the author, Kate Chopin, chose to use that reference specifically. And then you're going to write a quote sandwich that demonstrates Chopin's use of this, excuse me, I meant to change that, of this imagery. Okay? All right. So it says, which weather or illness example will you use? So you're going to go through Story of an Hour. And let's say maybe you want to use, we talked about she's got heart trouble. We haven't quite read farther down, but we have some images of some weather down here. So why, you're going to pick one of them. So which one are you going to use? So all you'd have to do is write the illness that you're looking at or the weather here. But be specific, I'm sorry. So like, are you going to use, the heart trouble? Or, like I said, we haven't read yet, so I don't want to tell you what the weather imagery is. I'll let you figure that out, okay? All right, so what point is it that you're trying to make about this? And make sure that you're giving context. So you have to make sure that you're telling your reader of your quote sandwich what's going on in the story. Just a quick little overview. Was it when she learns that her husband has been killed in a train accident? Or what happened? Is it the very opening or the very end of the story? So what's going on, okay? So point and context for this part. Okay. Oh, all right. Hang on. I got to get rid of Benny here. He's messing with the camera. Watch out, Ben. Okay. Sorry about that, guys. Okay. Then you're going to integrate the quoted material into a sentence. So what are you taking out of Kate Chopin's short story? And how are you going to integrate it into a sentence? All right, so remember, actually on the back of your paper, there are ways to integrate a quote. So I give you some options on how to do that, so you can look at the back. So remember, you want to integrate, so some of your words, the quoted material, and some more of your words. You never want to have a dropped quote, which would be a sentence that starts with quotation marks and ends with quotation marks. Okay, this is a no. So we want no drop quotes. All right, so where does it say that there is a reference to illness or weather? What are Kate Chopin's words? What did she write? Okay, and then the follow-up is, how does this quote connect to the point that you're making? All right, so remember, this part is going to be longer, so you're making the connection for your reader. So this is where you might go back to, it's more than just rain or snow or springtime. So you might go back to this, or you might look at the illness part. What does Thomas Foster say about these things? So what do you notice that's happening in the story that's related? Oh my gosh, it's sunny when this happens, or is that snow? What's that supposed to mean? Okay, so your job is to figure out figure out what you're going to talk about, illness or weather, what specific event in the story. What's the point you're going to make? Is there something that shows optimism? Is there something that shows sadness? Is it very gloomy? There's death in this story. Apparently, the husband has been killed in a train accident. Then you're going to pick Chopin's actual words. What does she say? And you're going to integrate it in with your own words. And then here comes the real work with your follow-up, your explanation. Remember, it's going to be longer, and you're making the connection for the reader. You can't assume that they understand that springtime represents rebirth or optimism, or that snow might represent death, or that to have a certain kind of illness might mean that there's some kind of character flaw or trait that comes out. So you have to draw the connection for them. Don't forget, on the back, if you need help integrating quotes, there are some examples for you to look at. All right, so after you have looked at this, then we're going to finish reading Story of an Hour, and then you'll have time to work on your quote sandwich. Your quote sandwich will be due the next time we have class, Wednesday, February 3rd, I believe that is. Okay? All right, if you have any questions, let me know. See you later, friends.